and Carol is due to come on at 12 o'clock. Can you handle the level of change where we'll bring you in 3 minutes early, Carol?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right. So you've got a very good idea of the kind of dynamic in the group here. And maybe just we're going to ask each of you to give one sentence to introduce yourself to Carol. I'll ask Carol, who the heck is Carol Seidman? And then we go ahead with the business planning side of it. So Rob Gaughan, who the heck is Rob Gaughan? And then we'll have Michelle.
I speak on saving lives while building the world and producing the future.
Okay, all right. Michelle, and then we'll have Lisa.
I'm a real estate educator and aspiring speaker.
Okay, Lisa, then Lynette. You're muted, Lisa.
I speak to professional women in terms of transitioning either in their career or in their life stage, and give them ideas how to do that more smoothly.
Okay, Lynette, then Leslie.
I speak on joy as a culture.
Okay, Leslie.
I help quality assurance people in highly regulated industries get the message about quality assurance to the rest of their organizations.
Okay, Carol, just so you know that this is actually an international class. Leslie is up in Canada. And as you right. And Megan, are you with us at the moment? Can you
I am.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Megan Van Putten, and I guide not-for-profits into excellency in service to fulfill their missions, their visions, and their purpose.
Okay, all right. Thank you for all of that. So we'll ask the question now, who is Carl Seidman? We'll put a few questions on about business topics as well, and he can give us his insights, and it's over to you as well and to ask all the questions. So who the heck is Carl Seidman?
Are you going to tell me or am I going to tell you?
You're going to tell us.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Carl Seidman, based in Chicago. I don't think I'm sandwiched anywhere between Connor and Kevin. I live in the city, probably one of only a couple people who do. But in the speaking world, I work with corporate financial planning and analysis teams at some of the largest companies in the world. And I help them establish better practices, universal communication across the whole team, and feel better about the work that they do collectively.
Okay. All right. So go to a few basics here with you. You've been in the speaking business how long?
I don't even know. Probably about, if I had to put a number on it, probably about 6 years.
Okay. All right. So
at least in the professional speaking world.
Okay. So when you started off and this is the solopreneur or other, what kind of a business model legal entity did you start and have you gotten? What would you suggest the speaker should have in relation to that?
Well, probably like many people, I started out as a solopreneur, sole proprietorship for tax purposes, but then realized that given that I wanted to run a business and not be Carl Seidman, I needed to form a business and legal entity. And so that's what I did. I also recognized that because I also do some consulting, I needed to make sure that I was protected from a liability perspective. So my business, even though I operate as Seidman Financial, the legal entity is Seidman Global LLC.
Right. And what kind of a legal entity are you?
It's a limited liability corporation.
Right. And reasons why you picked that one rather than a Nest Corp or something like that?
Not necessarily any reason. There's a whole lot of similarity between an S corporation and an LLC, especially when you're a single member LLC. My intention eventually is to add more full-time employees. And just given that I work in a space where there's some liability considerations and I want to operate as a separate entity, for me, the LLC was the right decision.
Right. And I think that's what many speakers have set themselves up as LLC or S Corp. Mm-hmm. So how do they go? well, just ask the question. Has anyone here set themselves up as an LLC or an S Corp at the moment, or any other legal entity? All right, quite a few of you. Yeah, okay. So how do you go about doing it, Carl?
It's really straightforward. I believe you go to your Secretary of State website, download some forms, determine what structure you want to be. They would like a little bit of money, and that will vary from state to state. I believe that in Illinois, it used to cost in excess, I want to say, of $150, but I believe that has gone in half. I want to say it's $75 now. But it's not tremendously expensive. You have to file some paperwork and you have to pay an amount every single year to renew your status.
Right. Okay. Questions from anyone, gang? Because I might be missing a lot of them. But I want to ask Kevin something, and Carol as well. What insurance do you have, or do you suggest speakers should have?
Is that for me? Or is that for Kevin?
Let's get Carol first, and then Kevin.
Okay. So there are a few different insurances you might think to have. Depending on whether you have a family or not, you may be inclined to have some life insurance, whether that is term or whole life, to be able to replace your income in the event of death. You may also consider to have short-term or long-term disability. So in the event that you're not able to work, you're probably going to want to have some kind of supplemental income, either for yourself or for your family or for your spouse. And then a couple of other business insurances you may think to have would be general liability. So in the event that you put on an event and somebody slips and falls or cuts their finger or something happens, you have insurance coverage and the individual can't come after you individually. So that's part of the reason to have an LLC, and also to be able to have general liability insurance assigned to the LLC. And then finally, you may think to have E&O, which is errors and omissions, which in the event of some kind of a consulting error or problem, if a client relies upon you and they sue you, you have E&O insurance to be able to protect you. And I'm going to go on pause because I have a child who's screaming at me in the background.
That's okay, yeah,
so
yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. Kevin, have you got business insurance?
I do. Oops. Yeah, I do. I have business insurance. I also have, because of my counseling certifications, I have malpractice insurance as well, because it's easy for me, either in coaching or in consulting, for people to think that I'm giving them not so much therapy, but for them to maybe come back at me that way. And so I have that kind of insurance as well. And then we have an umbrella policy at home to cover everything. I think it's good to get a good broker who can give you some good advice, probably a good attorney that you can pay them for an hour and say, what should I do here? And then that way you're not missing anything in terms of what you do. They need to know what you do so that they can determine your level of risk. And I think when that's mainly what you're trying to do, is to try to figure out, minimize the risk. But as you know, people can sue you for anything and everything. And so what you're just trying to do is to try to cover yourself in that regard. For example, when I rent a car, my car is covered under probably my insurance, or the rental car. It's probably covered under a couple of credit cards. I buy the loss damage waiver every day anyway, because I'm not just buying the risk, I'm buying the problem that it's going to cause for me to then fill out all the forms and take time to do stuff in an accident. And so when you get loss damage waiver, you're done. You walk away, you get on your airplane. If you don't have that, you're filling out forms and you might miss your airplane. So I'm thinking in terms of that kind of risk as well.
Right. Okay. And I mean, the reason why I asked that question on business insurance, because I saw something pop up in some speaker article or forum a couple of weeks ago, where people were asking what kind of someone said that they were asked by their client, or did they have insurance to cover their presentation, etc. So He mentioned they're responsible for coming back. Then no, I don't do it. I've never been asked for insurance in that sense. But general liability insurance can cost about $250 or $300 a year, I think, for just basic presentations and keynotes, etc. So it might be worth your while thinking about, or if someone does ask you for it, you know how to go about getting it. Michelle, in your area, realtors, I mean, I'm sure insurance is a hot topic in so many different ways, but have you got insurance on your side for, yeah?
Yeah, I carry E&O, and then I also have an umbrella policy.
Right, okay, good stuff, okay. So if anyone's got any questions about anything related to business, finance, or other, I'd be interested in throwing out to Carl. Kevin has a question.
Yeah, Carl,
Mhm.
how do your clients know about you, and how do you find new clients to know about you?
It's a loaded question. There's a lot of different ways, and I do that intentionally. So one point that I would make in the outset is my business is very, very niche. So I have a very, very narrow lane that I follow, but it's an enormous market. And I try to make sure that there are a lot of different channels and a lot of different ways that people can find out about me, both inbound as well as outbound. I have relationships with a number of organizations that see me as a subject matter expert that they have access to. So, for example, one of my affiliates, which is a very, very large association, they will come to me and say, Carl, can you write some blog articles for us? Can you do a video for us? And they'll promote it in their channels. They'll put it in their newsletter. They'll put it on their LinkedIn posts. They'll put it in their catalogs in front of their conference attendees. And so I get exposure to their audience through my language just by having a warm relationship with them. I also have other affiliates where they have tremendous audiences and they say, we don't have somebody like Carl, but in the event that somebody comes to us and says, we're looking for an expert here, we'll let Carl know, or we'll make the introduction to Carl. And so I just make sure that the relationships that I have are to very, very high profile organizations, associations, people, and that they think of me and they put me in front of some of their referral audiences. In terms of outreach, so that's a lot of coming towards me, but in terms of outreach, I have been very, very diligent about keeping names, emails in my CRM of anyone who has ever come across me in the last 10 years. And I will send very individualized emails to those people. I'll say, I remember exactly where you were sitting when we were together 3.5 years ago in New York. And I actually do. I'm not making that up. I pay very, very close attention. And I say, I remember you had, a toddler at the time that we were together. I'm curious how that is now. So I'll do outreach and I'll just say, hey, curious to hear what's going on. Or I'll say, hey, I've got something you might be interested in. And it's not overly salesy. It's just hey, here's a sprinkling of what's going on in my world. Just wanted to let you know about it. So those are a lot of ways that I keep in front of audiences, that targets that I will eventually want to get in front of, that they find out about me. I would honestly say too, that in the last just 6 months, I've been investing more time and attention on LinkedIn. I have no idea where it's going, but I have actually had a few inbound inquiries. Just maybe a month ago, I had gotten contact from a partner at a top 100 accounting firm. And he said, I'm interested in talking to you about developing our training curriculum for a whole firm. And I said, I assume that you found out about me because one of your staff attended one of my programs. He said, no, I follow you on LinkedIn. And I said, of course you do. I had no idea. And so I try to post a few times a week, something that's very thoughtful, that shows my expertise, but also shows that I'm not doing it for the sake of just churning content. And I believe that comes across in the way that I engage with people.
You have twin boys.
I have twin boys.
Under the age of 20.
They are under the age of 6. They are 5. They just turned 5 a couple weeks ago.
How do you do work-life balance?
There isn't such a thing as work-life balance. I think I've just come to accept that. I mean, I'll be real candid. 5 minutes ago, when my child was screaming at me, first of all, my wife is in Rhode Island right now, so my kids are hopefully upstairs and not down the street. But one of my boys just finished using the bathroom and he needed some help. So that's why I was upstairs a few minutes ago. I have been on client calls where that's happening. That's the reality. And I, 5+ years ago, I would have been horrified by what just took place, but there's nothing I can do about it. And especially people who have kids and have gone through having younger kids at some point in that development, they understand and they actually appreciate it. I know that sounds crazy, but a lot of people say, don't worry, Carl, I get it. Or, you know what, Carl, he's a father of twin boys. He's actually involved in their lives. Wow, that's amazing. So it adds a degree of differentiation of, here's a guy who, at least from the outside, looks like a very heavy-hitting guy who knows what he's talking about, but he's also a dad. He's also just a regular person like all of us. And so while 6 years ago that would have horrified me, I've come to relish in that and say, this is actually differentiation. This is something that sets me apart from your typical perfect resume person who doesn't show their family side at all. Takes a lot of coordination with my wife, with my in-laws. I mean, I ran into Kevin last weekend at the airport with my whole family coming back from vacation. But it does take more than just my wife and I coordinating and having good communication. It takes a tribe of people.
I think I'm going to put that in my business plan. I'm going to create a family that doesn't exist. And then every once in a while I'll leave and say, oh, this is good. I like this.
Yeah.
I got one more quick question. You said you are niched. Do you ever fear that you're too niched and that people will disregard you for something you can do because they only see you in this niche?
In short, I'd say maybe to an extent, but there is something that I would call one of the many speaker paradoxes of, and I'm sure all of us can relate to this at some point, of, hey, Kevin, you're a professional speaker. Can you speak on communication for retailers? Sure, I've done communication for doctors. Of course I could do it for retailers. And then you go over there and you start working with retail companies and they say, Kevin, could you deliver a program on managing chaos in retail environments? And then you say, sure, of course, I've worked in retail, I can do that. And then pretty soon you start to see yourself all over the place of, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. And in the earlier part of my business, that was me. And there were advantages of it because I have more content now than anybody in my space. And I can say yes if I want to, but I'm very, very careful about what I say yes to and where along the fringes I play. Because if something is too far out of the fringe, I'm going to spend too much time, too much effort, too much money. I'm going to deliver it one time. And then I'm going to say, well, that wasn't worth it. So the answer that question I always ask and answer is this a one-time program? Is this a one-time fee? Is this going to lead to continued business with this client or somewhere else? The answer is no. I say no, and I refer somebody else. However, if I see potential, I'll give an example. A client of mine, Fortune 100 healthcare company, I've done probably probably 4 years worth of programs for them. Every single time they get enough people, they bring me in. Now, after the first delivery, they were like, Carl, that was great. What else do you do? Yeah. And I was kind of like, what else do you need? And I put together a level 2 program out of thin air. I put it together. It was related to level 1. And they said, that was great. Carl, what else do you do? And I said, I can do anything you need me to do. And they said, well, can you do presentation skills for finance people? And I said, yeah, I can. But I thought to myself, I said, I have no other client that has ever asked me to do this before. But this is something that I know I'm going to be able to sell elsewhere. And it's also a continuity or continuation of this client relationship. So I said, they're asking for it. And every single time they get a new cohort, they ask me to come in for a level 1 and a level 2. If I knock it out with level 3, that's just going to give me more level 3s. And by the way, if I do this, I can start marketing it elsewhere. And guess what? I built this, I think, 3 years ago. I have sent out emails over the last couple of weeks to people saying, oh, by the way, I'm starting to do in-person effective presentation skills for finance people again in person. Just letting you know, I'm probably going to do it virtually too. And of the first maybe 10 emails I sent out, the people responded to, about half of them said, I'm interested in that program. So I'm always asking that question of how far is too far to go outside of the lane? If it's going to bring continued business with that client, or I can market it elsewhere, I'll say yes. If it's not, almost always I'm going to say no.
But you could almost do anything when you end with for financial professionals.
100%.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, what field do you want to play on? You know, do I want to say like managing chaos for financial professionals? That's not me. Do I want to do, you know, teamwork strategies for finance professionals? Not me. But I can add some really smart marketing. I mean, I'll even do the opposite, Kevin. I'll say financial skills for non-financial people.
Mhm.
I can teach exactly what I teach.
Yes.
I don't want to say dumb it down, but I can simplify it, make it a bit higher level. And I think it was in 2020, that was my #2 program, was financial leadership for non-financial leaders.
And then if you run into things you can't do, but you refer that to somebody and bring them in-house in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
to become an associate with you, they can do it under your auspices.
Correct.
You get paid, they get paid a piece of what you get paid, and so forth.
Correct.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know if you've been talking rates or economics at all in this program, but, you know, I've been increasing my rates steadily over the last 6 years. And they're at a point now where I can easily refer the business to somebody else. It will be a very reasonable rate for them, and it will be a very reasonable rate for me as well. So where you can get yourself in a little bit of trouble if it's too low and you say, well, I'm going to offload this to somebody else, the rate may not be enticing to them, and it may not be worthwhile to you to nurture the relationship. So you have to put some thoughtfulness into that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
We'll just come back to the focus of today's session about managing your business. I wanted to just get a bit more hard nosed on some of the things you're actually doing, Carl. One is, how do you manage taxes? Okay, I've got a bank account, separate one for the tax, they call the tax man cometh. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I make sure every time I get paid, I drop a certain percentage in there. But what do you do? Because people, speakers over the years have got, also we spoke earlier about, we know a lot of bankrupt speakers, we know a lot of speakers who've also run into major doo-doo with the IRS. So
Sure.
what advice do you have for the group here?
Well, let me address this in 2 ways. Is one, taxes, and 2, finances, because while they are very similar, they're also different. So for taxes, ironically, I'm a CPA, but I don't do my own taxes. Main reason being, just because I'm a CPA doesn't mean I do taxes for a living. And it's going to be a real switch to my brain to go from what I do 99% of the time to all of a sudden put on my tax hat and say, well, now I'm doing that. I'd rather hand it off to a CPA who does taxes for a living. He's also a lawyer, who does it for a living, and pay him $600 to do it a year. You know, same as what Kevin said to me, that's just a cost of doing business. It's a cost of getting it out of my head so I don't have to think about it. And great. In terms of taxes, having an LLC, having a separate entity, the first year was atrocious. I had no idea how I should be organizing things. But over the last, I would probably say 3 years, it takes me about an hour to do my tax prep every single year. I've got a pretty good size, pretty good running business. It takes me an hour to put it together for my CPA. And that's not just for my business, that's for my business and for my family. It takes no time to do. Now, the reason why it takes no time to do, and this is the second piece of what I want to say, is because I've got my financial house in order. I know my systems. I know where everything goes every single week. I know how to report everything. I know how to feed it into my tax prep file so that it takes 15 minutes to do this once a year. What I would suggest for anyone who wants to get better is almost think backwards. What do you want your financial package to look like? What do you want your tax package to look like once a year or 2 times a year or 4 times a year? And how do you need to build some systems to support that? Some people are surprised to know that as a finance guy, I don't keep financial statements. So I don't have a profit and loss statement. I don't have a balance sheet. I don't have a cash flow. I have revenues and I have expenses. That's essentially a P&L. Now, the revenues are coming from my invoicing system. So I have a process by which I invoice my clients, whether that's directly from my business or whether it's through one of my affiliates or an association. So to give you an example, I have a program that I'm going to be invoicing next week. That's a Seidman financial program. I know how that goes into my invoicing system. I have a program that just got sold by one of my affiliates. I have a small upfront invoice that I need to send now, and then another invoice that I send once the program is delivered. All of that is in the exact same program. It's cloud-based, so I can access it anywhere. I can click export to Excel, and it's done and it's coded. It literally takes 10 seconds to do and 15 minutes to organize. On the expense side, I have one program that I use, that's Expensify. Everything gets sent to my email. I forward it to receipts@expensify.com. It knows my email and it files it accordingly. If I have a paper receipt, I take a picture with my phone, send it to Expensify, it's done. It probably takes me around 30 minutes once a year to code everything and put it into my tax file. So that's in terms of organization. And the last piece that I would say, and this is really important for any business, is to understand your numbers. So I'm sure that Connor's brought this up, that it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So when you are charging revenue, that's what you're bringing in. But if you've got all of these other expenses, well, that's going to take away what you're making. So if you're charging X and your costs are Y, X minus Y is what you actually get in your bank. And so you want to always think about what are your most profitable opportunities? What are your best growth opportunities? Which expenses are crushing you? What's a better way to go about a certain expense process? So for travel, for office expenses, whatever it might be, what's a better way to save on your expenses? Also recognize, and this is something that I think a lot of speakers don't think about, your time is a measure of profitability. If you're going to be spending a lot of time on something, that's a cost. That means that you can't spend your time doing something else. So if you're able to do a gig at a 50% rate, but it costs you no time, it takes you no time to do that, and then you've got a full fee gig that takes you 50 hours to prepare for it, the one that's at 50% your rate actually may be far more profitable and far more worth your while than the really lucrative gig that you actually don't make any money on. So it's really important to think about your processes, what you want the end goal to be, build your processes towards that end goal, and really think about the metrics that matter rather than just say, oh, I'm making a lot of money on the top line, but turns out I don't have the money in my bank account.
Carl, what financial system are you using? Is it QuickBooks? And the other one is then if we talk about CRM, what CRM have you got?
Sure. So I'll give you the names of the software that I use. My invoicing software, it's also a timekeeping software if you wanted to use it. Could also be an expense software if you wanted to use it. It's called Harvest. I have been using it, I think, for probably 4 or 5 years. It's not the best one. Pardon?
Is it spelled Harvest? No fancy.
Yeah,
spelling?
HARVEST.
I haven't heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's somewhere between $120 and $150 a year. Not expensive. Part of my motivation for doing it is I can set budgets. I can tie timekeeping to it if I have VAs when wanting to have timekeeping tied to a certain project. Invoicing can happen direct, and if somebody wants to pay me directly, they can do it through the email, and it ties to Stripe and to PayPal. Expenses is Expensify. They increased their monthly fee from, I think it was $3 a month to $10 a month. So it's $120 a year. It's terrific. And if it ever went away, I would be very concerned about what I would do. I think it's a phenomenal piece of software. And then my CRM is Active Campaign, which is coincidentally a Chicago-based company. They are not small, but they're not a HubSpot or an Infusionsoft, but it's a combination of all of the different functionality that I had been looking for a very long time. It's probably my 4th CRM, and I've now been with them for about 3 years.
Right. And can you recall how much you're paying for that on a yearly basis?
A lot. So there are lots of different tiers of how you subscribe to it. So there's like a basic level that doesn't cost a lot. There's a plus level that costs more. There's a professional level that costs more. There's an enterprise level that costs more. And then within each of those levels, it's also priced according to the number of contacts you have in the CRM. So I have a CRM that has, I want to say, around 6,000 people. I'm in the tier that is between 5,000 and 10,000. So if I add 3,000 more people, it's not going to cost me a dime, but it's expensive. I believe I pay between $2,000 and $2,500 a year for it. But what it does is it's my CRM. So it keeps all the detail of every single contact. I can tag them accordingly. I know all the details of everything. It's also my sales pipeline manager. So I used to use Pipedrive, I think it was called. That was like, I have a cold lead, I have a hot lead. It allows me to manage my whole sales process. What Active Campaign allows me to do is tie all of my CRM to my sales process. It's also essentially MailChimp. So all of my mail campaigns come out of Active Campaign. I have all the metrics, all the reporting. I can tie all of that to my sales deals. And then it's also automation software like an Infusionsoft. So when somebody goes to my website, if you were to go to my website, at the top of it, you would see subscribe to the statement, put your name, email into it. Active Campaign will send you an email automatically with links to my articles. It'll put you into my deals. It'll tag you as being somebody with a low interest level. And then I'll be able to reach out to you individually and say, hey, Connor, thanks for subscribing to the statement. I always like to send a personal note to people who take the time to subscribe. What is it you're looking for? And would it be helpful to set up a call?
Right.
So it's all those things brought together. Not inexpensive, but it was worth it given what I was trying to do.
Okay. All right. Questions from the group while you're getting your thoughts together. What other, what's it, Megan, you have a question?
Carl, how long did you say, thanks, Connor. Carl, how long did you say that you've been on LinkedIn?
Forever. I think as long as it's been around.
How long did you say that you've been focusing in LinkedIn? Like in the
actively focusing, probably 6 months.
That's what I thought.
Passively focusing, 5 years.
Okay, so so in the last 6 months, is that when you grew your audience? Because it's quite large.
So it's really an interesting story.
It is
I'm not going to go
interesting.
so deep into it. I had in December, the very beginning of December, and I don't want to get into vanity metrics because I think that that's a kind of a shallow thing to talk about, of like
Yeah.
likes and followers and things like
Sure.
that. Like, let's not get into that. But in terms of connections, I think I had around 4,500 or 4,700 connections in the beginning of December. And since I started actively focusing on it, I have not made one. I shouldn't say I haven't made one. I've probably made 10 to 20 outreaches to people who I want to connect with. Everything else has been organic people wanting to connect with me or following me. I think I now have over 8,000 or something like that.
And it's very authentic. It's very impressive.
100%.
And that's why when you said 6 months, I almost dropped my jaw.
Six months, it's doubled my following, my audience, my connections with next to zero outreach.
And you
from
can
me.
really see like true engagement.
Yeah.
This is like an example of an incredible leader, influencer that's authentic. It's one of the best I've seen, to be honest.
Thank you.
And it's not vanity. It's like
Mhm.
purposeful.
And I have people who will comment on my posts. Again, I don't want to get into
I see
vanity,
that.
but people who will
can't.
post and
The
say,
engagement.
this
Mhm.
is an outstanding thought,
is.
or Carl, you're so mindful of what you're saying, or I
Yes.
always appreciate the thoughtfulness that you put in here. And I'm going to do a real quick gripe and then I'm going to be quiet.
Sure.
Is there are people in my space, people who would probably say, I'm a competitor of Carl, who are extremely active on LinkedIn, get 1,000 engagements on a post, and they're giving away, a bunch of PDFs and ebooks and things like that.
Wow.
Now, here's the challenge. This is why I don't want to get, or why I would encourage all of you not to focus on vanity, but to think about engagement and connection and relationships.
Mhm.
When I take a look at the people who are engaging with hey, here's a free PDF, here's all this stuff I'm giving out. When you take a look at who's following them, it's people, 99% are not in this country.
Yeah.
99% of them are college age kids or interns or somebody who's in search of a job. And
Mhm.
I'm not trying to minimize those people. I'm not saying that people overseas are not worthwhile followers. The people who are in college are not worthwhile followers. They're probably not the people who are going to give you business.
Right.
The people who are going to give you business are managers, are directors, are partners, are presidents, are CEOs, CFOs, the decision makers who see the quality of what you're doing.
Right.
And when you see somebody who's just giving away a bunch of PDFs, they're just trying to get followers. They're just trying to get clicks. I don't want followers and I don't want clicks who don't care about me and what I have to offer.
My last question is, do you have any help on this, or is this all your work?
It's all me.
So that's very obvious as well.
And
That's what I could detect here. Was
and something
just
that's a
pure
little bit
blood,
new,
sweat, and
Megan.
tears.
Yeah, something that's a little bit new, Megan, is for the last year and a half, I have dabbled a little bit in part-time copywriters. So about a year and a half ago, I said, look, I need help with my newsletter. I just need a little bit more help. I want you to take my content and write it in a way that's my voice, my words, but you're putting it together. And I had a copywriter a year and a half ago who was truly one of the nicest, most wonderful women I've ever met. But she wasn't able to really weave in my voice. It was more her voice, and it was very social media. I don't know the right word, but there's a feel on social media versus a feel when somebody is really writing from their brain and their heart. She was writing like this, you need to know about these 7 tips. Click here. And I'm like, I'm not going to write that way. That's just not what I do.
Yeah.
I have had a new copywriter for the last couple of months. I love to write shorthand on LinkedIn. And I said, Kate, go on to LinkedIn, click on all my articles, harvest what I'm writing on LinkedIn and repurpose that for my newsletter. And she's done a wonderful job.
Nice.
So it's still my voice, it's still my content. It's so much easier for me to write on LinkedIn versus a 1,200 word blog article. She's great at the blog articles. I'm great at giving her the ideas and all the clusters of what she needs to weave together. And it's worked out very well.
Yeah.
Carl, how do you structure this? How often do you post? And then do you know the next time you're going to post right now?
No, it's kind of weird to share my process, but I'm a brainy person. I have ideas all the time. I'm very contrarian in that I see what is out there that I don't like, and I say, this is why this is wrong. This is why you need to follow this path instead of that path. So I see the problems in the world. I see the problems in my function. I see the problems in my profession. I say, this is what we need to do to fix it. Stop following the masses. Stop following the easy stuff. This is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And so I get ideas. I'll open up a new email in Gmail and I'll just start typing, writing, even on my phone. I mean, I just start writing something. Might be a whole post. It might be a few sentences, and I save it as a draft.
Yeah.
If you were to go into my drafts, I probably have over 300 drafts of ideas. Now, I'm going to probably have some time where I say, you know what? Let me go through the drafts. Which ones can I bring to finish? Or, you know what? This was an idea. I didn't have time because I had to take care of my kid in the bathroom. Let me go back to this. And I go back to it. I write something. And then I think to myself, when was the last time I posted? If it was yesterday, I'm not going to post today. If it was a couple of days ago and it was something in finance, I'm probably not going to post something again in finance. So I try to mix things up and I try to create enough space so that people aren't like, oh, Carl again. I'm so tired of seeing his name and I'm just tired of him. So there are certain people on LinkedIn, I'm like, I'm tired of seeing their name. They're just posting and posting and posting and posting and posting. Unfollow. It's not that I have anything against them. It's just too much noise. So when I have something that I want to share that I think has enough breathing room, I share it. I don't plan anything in advance.
Okay, interesting. Comments from anyone else?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you were first starting out, how did you determine your fee? And then how did you determine your fee as it increased since you started 6 years ago?
Okay, so my initial fee was free because I didn't even realize that you were supposed to make money from speaking. I sometimes joke around with NSA people. I said, before I found NSA, I thought that you were either a high school motivational speaker or you were Tony Robbins. I didn't realize it was anything in between. And I'm serious when I say that. I had no idea that that was really a thing. Turn the clocks back probably 10-ish years. I was on a project for my old firm when I was working full-time in consulting. And a colleague of mine said, I'm taking 3 days to go to a financial modeling training program. I said, oh, that sounds interesting. I didn't even know that that existed. What is it? And he said, it's at the American Management Association in Chicago. I'll let you know what it's like. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So he came back. I said, how was it? He's like, honestly, you could teach that. And I said, was it that bad that I could teach it? Or do you think like I'm not qualified to do it? He said, no, it was good, but I think you'd be really good at doing this. And I went to the website and amazingly, they were looking for a financial modeling instructor. And so I threw my resume at it, didn't hear anything for 6 months. And then one day I got an email saying, hey, we looked at your resume. We'd really like to talk to you 6 months later. And I would take vacation days away from work to go teach for 3 days. That was my fee. The first time I ever did it. And so whatever the American Management Association was going to pay me. And at the time, I mean, this was 10 plus years ago. I was like, this is great. Like this is a great rate. And so that was the rate that I quoted on everything. And then I just started to learn what others in my space were charging. I said, oh, this is not a great rate. And so I just started to pay attention of where am I in terms of my quality, my experience, my tenure doing this versus others. What are they charging? How is mine similar to theirs? How is mine different? And I just started to collect data points to give you a little bit of, and I know we shouldn't talk too much about detailed economics here, but compared to what the rate was then to what the rate is now, it is, I think, 20 times higher now than it was then. That comes through experience, that comes through creating my own proprietary content and saying, I know what the market needs. I know what I can offer that nobody else can offer. And I triangulate. I say, what do I believe I'm worth to them? What do I think others who they're looking at are charging, and how do I compare to that? And what do I think their budget is? And if their budget is way below where I'm charging, I say, look, this is what I can give you. I can probably meet a budget with some program, or I can introduce you to somebody who is at that price point. If they are not clear on what my value is, then I have failed as a salesperson and as a marketer. I need to explain, what is their pain? What are they missing? What are they not able to do, which motivated them to reach out to me or to take my call in the first place? And then, I'll give a really interesting example from 2 weeks ago. This communication presentation skills for finance people, giant investment company reached out to me because somebody at the company had attended one of my programs a long time ago. And they said, we got your name from them. We'd like to talk to you. And they said, who else is out there in the market that does what you do? So they were kind of fishing around me to say, who are your competitors? Who should we also be looking at? And my strategy for that is I'm never going to put anybody down. I'm never going to say, oh, this is a terrible company, you shouldn't look at them. But I gave them 2 additional resources that they could look at. I said, this is an outstanding company, but their focus is mostly on branding. So they're going to talk about branding and the layout and the aesthetic of your PowerPoint presentations. If that's what you're looking for, they will fit your need perfectly. And here's another example. This is actually one of my affiliates, but they focus a lot on PowerPoint speed training, and it's largely led by investment bankers. If that's what you're looking for, they would be a great provider for you. So I've lifted up these 2 other providers, but I've said, they're so not what you're looking for. I am, but I'm more than happy to make an introduction to these others if you one day want to go towards branding, or if you want to go towards PowerPoint speed training with investment bankers.
Okay.
Kevin.
Thank you. And then also,
go ahead.
just a second question.
Oh, sure.
Is how did you set up your affiliates, and how do you determine the rate?
That's a little tricky. So they have their own businesses and the way they do business. So if I go in and I say, affiliate, this is how I do business, you cater to me, otherwise we're not going to do business together, that's not going to work. At the same time, I need to also say, this is how I do business. How can we make an arrangement so that it aligns with the way you do business? So we're working together in partnership. It's not a zero-sum game of if you win, I lose. If I win, you lose. It's how do we work together so that you're happy, so that I'm happy, but most importantly, so that the client and the company is happy. So with that, I say, this is what my program is. This is the audience that it serves. This is the pain that it addresses. This is the rate that I charge. What does this need to be net? What does this need to be gross? So gross is what the client sees. Net is what I get and what my affiliate gets. So similar with triangulation, we need to make sure that the gross makes sense. We need to make sure that the net makes sense. And what's been interesting is all my affiliates are different. My cut is different with each one of those affiliates. The gross rates I try to make sure are very, very consistent because, and I'll give you an example, one of my affiliates introduced me to Verizon a number of years ago. My other affiliate also introduced me to Verizon a number of years ago. Verizon was looking at different programs, but it all came back to me. And I immediately went to both affiliates and to Verizon. I said, by the way, everybody, I'm involved in all of this. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to screw anybody. Affiliate, you know, I work with affiliate A, you know, I work with affiliate B, you know, I work with affiliate A. Verizon, just so you know, I'm the facilitator. And what ended up happening was affiliate A said, great. Affiliate B said, great. And Verizon said, awesome to know that this is you. Because they didn't know that it was me. They knew the program that they chose. They didn't know that I was going to be the one delivering it. So transparency and good communication is very, very important, but also know your worth and when you're willing to walk away. This was in December. I had a loose agreement with one of my affiliates where it was kind of a last minute program. They candidly were about to really screw me. And I was one day away from walking away from this affiliate, from working with them at all. And they said, we're going to do right by you. We'll eat the cost. So you got to be able to stand up for yourself and know when you have to, stand your ground versus when you give in and say, okay, I'm not going to fight this fight. Shouldn't be a fight. Kevin?
Thank you.
One of the things that I've noticed with talking to other speakers is you could kind of separate the ones who survive by the decision they made on COVID day one, when everybody's business canceled for the next 2 years. The old way of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
And then what people did as a result of that. Do you remember what decisions you made when you realized this was a game changer?
Yeah. So, I mean, I used to be in the NSA Facebook group. I haven't gone on Facebook in a year. So I don't know what even goes on in the group anymore. But I remember at the very beginning of COVID, it was what was in everybody's brain of, is this thing really happening? What does it mean? Are we really not going to be able to travel? How long is this going to last? And every single thing that was in every person's brain. And I remember I had gotten an email from an affiliate. And again, I have probably a half dozen affiliates. So I got an email from one and they were like, we're going to be cutting instructor rates. We're really sorry, but please bear with us and let us know if you're willing to accept that or not. And I remember I posted something. I said, I can't believe that this is happening. Like, what, they really think people are going to cut their rates and be willing to do that? And I had some people who were like, bravo, Carl. And I had some people who were like, shame on you, Carl. Like, you have no idea where this is going. And taking a look back at it now, I'm like, yep, shame on me. I should have known that this was it was going to be a big thing. I walked away from that affiliate. I said I would rather take 0 revenue than take 50%. And my circumstances were such that was my position. And the reason why, and this is my reason, everyone's reason is different, is I did not believe that the quality of my content justified a 50% haircut just because times got difficult. Is an employer going to just cut your salary because times are tough? They're just going to pay you 50%. Why? Because it's difficult? Or, the grocery store, they're just going to cut prices because it's a really difficult time for everybody. I mean, go to the grocery store, everything's twice as expensive now. So I walked away from that affiliate relationship and they didn't call me for a year and a half. And then when things started coming back, they called me again. I turned it down anyway, because they said, it's just not the right circumstances for me. When the circumstances are right, you'll hear from me. So I never cut my rates. And then about 6 months, so COVID, if that happened April of 2020, December of 2020, I doubled my rates. Seemingly unheard of. Why did I do that? I went 100% virtual. No change to my content, no change to my value, but the travel expenses went away. And what I used to do is I used to bake my travel expenses into my fee. And I said, well, hold on. If I'm not taking $3,000 for hotel and airfare, why should I charge this rate? I should be charging more and making the same amount. So I increased my rates. My mastery of the virtual space has gone from 10% mastery to much, much, much higher. And my feedback for my programs has actually gotten far better virtually than it was in person. And so the dynamic, the value, the economics of virtual, I believe justified an increase of my rate. And I continue to believe, and I don't mean to sound immodest here, I continue to believe that I'm the best at what I do in my space. And if they were to go to some other person who they think is comparable, they would say, hands down, Carl is so much better. I can't believe that we got such a deal on him. I don't want somebody to say we got a really good deal on Carl. I want them to say he was expensive, but we got a 10 times return on what we spent on him in terms of the value he delivered. I want people to see value. I don't want people to see we got a good deal.
Nicely put, nicely put. Any final questions for Carl before we say adios to him and thank him for his great contribution? All right, it's been interesting, Carl, man. I really enjoyed it. Some really good thoughts and some very interesting little follow-ups. Harvest Financial is a new one to me. I got to check that one out.
It's not the best, but it's good enough and it's not that expensive.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be using any systems that ain't good, at least.
Yeah,
so
of all of those, to me, Expensify is just
the one that
I get excited just talking about it. I think it's just such a phenomenal system. Harvest, you can find Harvest or something similar. Zoho is very similar. And then Active Campaign, what I'll say in terms of CRMs and systems, the best one is the one that you use. If you're going to buy one that's really expensive that you don't use, it's not a good one. If you're going to buy a cheap one that you use all day long and you love it, that's the best one.
Yeah.
So Active Campaign is my 4th CRM. I didn't like the other ones. I didn't use them. Active Campaign, unfortunately, it's more expensive, but I use it. And I love it.
So after you said that you use Expensify and Harvest, are you saying you don't use any kind of accounting software like QuickBooks or anything?
No, I used to. I don't use it anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to check this up and see what actually is all about, but I like it. So gang, let's give a giant hoot hoot to Carl in appreciation. All right, hoot 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 hoot.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Carl, thanks a
Carl.
million. Go back to the little fella. I hope
No problem. Hopefully they're still up there.
Yeah. Take care. Cheers.
All right. Bye, everybody. Nice to meet you all.